Welcome to Ring Talk, episode 170. I'm reliably informed. With myself, Martin Theobald, and Steve Goodwin. You're back from your break, your holidays. How are you?
All good. All excited about the forthcoming few months and looking to get back into things, and got a load of meetings to do with boxers, a few signings. We've got some title fights to try and fix up for later in the year. So hell of a lot of stuff going on for a lot of our fighters. So
Yeah, it feels like the year's coming to a close, but you've still got two Box Manias to come in October, on October 12th, and then in December as well, haven't you? So there's still loads.
and we've also got Brad Paul's to sort out. We've got Sajid Abid's fighting for the Midlands area title in December. Lewis Oakford will come on to his boxing this weekend for a title, and we've got all the Lauren Parker at the moment negotiating for a big fight for her. There's loads going on, loads and loads going on. So it's quite. I don't feel like it's coming to the end. I feel that we're just building up to a crescendo of two massive shows plus loads of our boxers in big fights. So it's great.
Yeah. Before we sort of get into the Goodwin boxing stuff, you mentioned about Lauren. Female boxing, there was a lot of it over the weekend, sort of headlining events at Madison Square Garden in the arena part. You had Michaela Meyer versus Sandy Ryan. Over in Sheffield, you had Rhiannon Dixon against Terry Harper. And it got me thinking about women's boxing and Michaela Meyer and Terry Harper, who are two fighters that I think almost sum up what's really good about women's boxing and what's really flawed about women's boxing. In that they're both women that are willing to just go and fight anyone, it seems, sort of take me up a weight, take me down a weight, whatever. But it's hard to establish who are the main fighters in the divisions. And we know there's sort of a smaller talent pool and a weaker talent pool in women's than men's. But when you've got Terry Harper going as a 3-weight world champion, I don't know what weight she's meant to be. Michaela Mayer seems to fight sort of anyway. Clarissa Shield went up to heavyweight, but the fight was at something like 170 pounds and was also for a light heavyweight title. I suppose the point being, it doesn't feel like women's boxing has progressed as far as maybe it'd be hoped in my mind, I suppose, when it started to pick up momentum 4 or 5 years ago. Is that a fair reflection, do you think?
I think that's fair. I think it also comes down to the fact that promoters are still not really getting behind women's boxing. I think they started to, but they seem to have rescinded it, in my opinion. And I think what said it all to me was when the Cole Greaves fighter won on Sky and beat the Sky home fighter, Shannon Ryan. He beat. She won the British and Commonwealth, and Sky and Matchroom did not exercise the option to have her again. So they had a woman that was British and Commonwealth, now ranked in the world's top 10, and they didn't want to give her any further fights. That example says it all.
Yeah, I mean, the Lauren Parker example, I don't know the intricacies and the ins and outs, and you might correct me otherwise, but Sky, Dazn, TNT, none of them seem to have shown an interest in picking up her fight. She's European champion, and for anyone that's never seen Lauren fight, her fights are incredible. Yeah. She's never, ever in a dull fight. She's moved up in weights sort of at late notice. She'll fight anyone, and she's an absolute sort of ferocious fighter in the ring. But there doesn't seem to be any appeal from networks to pick her up.
But it's changed. The women boxing, and I've spoke to Lauren about this in detail. The general thing of women boxing seems to be contracting. They seem to be, you got the odd one, the token. It seems to be more of token ones. The ones that are there, so they've got the ones they've got. But now you don't see them signing women from scratch from the bottom anymore, or even from midway up. They're not doing it. The Shannon Courtneys of this world have disappeared off the radar. Some of them they're getting beat, and was it what's her name? Whatever it was, the Tony Pilfire. Her name's escaped me. Who got beat last time? They're just not that fussed. They're not that. Yeah. They're obviously there seems to be the promoters are concentrating more on building up their fighters for Riyadh and the Saudis, and that's where the rest of it doesn't seem to matter as much. But they're not signing many men either. There's a few they're signing, but there's not. You know, in the old days, you'd know that you'd see them signing all the talent and building up big fights. Sam Gilly, who was mandatory for the British title, and with Sky just let him go, and he signed with Frank Warren, who I said before is the one signing them.
Yeah, no, it's true. And you sort of knew who you were meant to be getting behind as the next set of fighters. Right now, I couldn't tell you, if I'm perfectly honest. It's
no, I mean
it's unclear.
It's unclear. You're getting like the Azim Eubank card is being built, but you've got to remember the last time Sky had a show, I'm right in saying it was the one at Bolton, was it? At
Barnsley.
Barnsley, and that was on the 3rd of August. We're now in the 1st of October tomorrow. That's 2 months. And still, we're now talking towards the end of October, their next show. That's nearly 3 months apart.
Yeah, and it's the only one scheduled as well.
It does. And Eddie, Eddie did a show on Saturday that, by his admission, was not a particularly great show. It was pretty much hotched and botched because they'd lost the top of the bill.
It's not even say it wasn't a great show. It was a terrible show for something that had made its way onto sort of domestic TV-ish by Dazn. But even saying losing the top of the bill, it was meant to be, wasn't it Johnny Fisher, Andre Rudenko? Nobody cares about that fight. I'm not even convinced like the Fisher household care about that fight.
Yeah, see, what you're talking about is the product doesn't, we keep saying it, but the product doesn't seem that great at the moment, does it? It just doesn't.
No, outside of Riyadh season. Speaking of Riyadh season, there you go. It's a nice little segue into it. Yeah, the Joshua Dubois fight. Did you watch that?
Yeah, I watched it over in Turkey. Yeah, you watched it.
Did you watch the whole event or just sort of get in for the main one?
I saw the Shiraz Denny fight. I saw that fight, and I think I saw one other. I can't remember which one I saw, but I saw the last 3 fights. I mean, the Shiraz was devastating, wasn't he? He really does look the real deal.
He's an unbelievable talent. I went with my son and sort of said to him beforehand, in a few years' time, I think you'll be saying that you saw Hamza Shiraz live. You know, he's one of those kind of fighters that you'll be quite proud to have seen him on his ascent. Because in a few years' time, he'll probably be fighting out in America and Saudi and all sorts of places that you.
I mean, what he did to Tyler Denny was Jesus. That was nobody does that to Tyler Denny, do they?
No. I've seen a few people sort of criticise it as a fight, saying sort of as a really poor main support. I don't think it was at all. I think it's a really well matched fight. I think just displayed how far above domestic level Hamza Shiraz is. Yeah, he's a frightening talent.
Yeah. So no, I thought he was superb, and he just really looked the real deal, didn't he? Really looked the real deal.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we'll see, and we've got. I thought. I mean, my view on Joshua. I don't know. We haven't spoken about this. I think he's been an inspiration for British boxing, winning the Olympic gold, whether he won the final or not. I thought there's been a lot of good stuff. He has got failings in his makeup as a boxer, but I don't think, and you were right about it, because you said this comeback is not real. He's not fighting anybody and you said this, you called it. But I did think that the corner work was absolutely abominable. I mean, the instructions when you hear were so bad, and you're thinking, and I said about the Don Charles effect, and I think that had a massive effect. I think if you swap trainers over, you might have had a totally different result. And he needs, in my opinion, not to rematch Dubois. Make a phone call to John Charles and make peace with where they went wrong in their lives, and he needs to go to Don Charles. That's my opinion. Although I'm not sure it will ever work, but that's the sort of thing he needs, somebody that can inspire him, can motivate him, and can give good instructions, because those instructions were absolutely ludicrous. And they were, but sometimes, as I've said before, trainers make their way up the ranks without actually doing anything, without serving an apprenticeship, without doing what they do and building fighters from nothing. Like people, I'll mention Andy Gill, who's I think is a great trainer, who's building up from nothing, but he's showing he can do it. But some trainers just get these fighters and then they think they're great, but you need to be able to show you can take a fighter up a level, and and I think sometimes there becomes a fad in boxing, and these trainers don't last. And I think Anthony Joshua, if he is going to carry on, and I'd probably be happier to see him not carry on, but if he does want to carry on, he needs a team change.
No, I agree. I think there's a few sort of themes out of that. One being, as you say, Anthony Joshua has done incredible things for the sport in the UK. Sort of from inspiring lots of others to get involved to the things he does that people don't see, the sort of charitable work and giving of his time and his money and his efforts, through to the sort of ability to bring others through on his undercards on these massive fights and give others opportunities. But to me, he's like he's the David Beckham of boxing, in that there's more PR and hype around him than there is substance that sits underneath it. Not to say they aren't top level, but they aren't that elite level to me. Just sort of my thoughts on it. The bit about the trainers, yeah. I mean, Ben Davison, there's no case study that you can show me that says Ben Davison improves fighters or builds fighters necessarily. Lee Wood is maybe the only one that you could sort of point as, he's built something out of him that wasn't on display before. But it comes to when you mentioned earlier about Tony Pill. You can see Tony Pill there in Don Charles's corner, in the same way Don Charles is there in every Tony Pill fighter's corner. Whether he's meant to be or not, I've had Don sat next to me in the chair on the front row at York Hall, shouting sort of instructions, and then by the end of the round, he's moved himself to being in the corner and he's got a stool and he's like, right, now I think no one's going to tell you not to because you're a giant man who could throw them all around still.
But you see, Tony Pill's doing his apprenticeship in the sport, right?
Yeah, and he's getting mentored by someone who's been there and done it. In 5 years' time, that's going to serve Tony so much benefit.
But then you've got there are other trainers out there, and I mentioned Andy because purely he's producing champion after champion from nothing, and there's trainers out there, in my opinion, far better than the ones that are getting the high-profile fighters.
Yeah.
I take Don Charles out of this because I said that he would make a difference of being in Dubois' corner, and exactly what I said about the fact that would have an impact on Anthony Joshua. I still say now, Don Charles being in the other corner was a massive problem for them.
Yeah, I was down at the event, and it was incredible. Sort of, I mean, you can touch on the Saudi sort of anthem, and I was chatting with my dad the day after, and he didn't realise the anthem had been booed so extensively within the.
Was it being booed? Was it?
Yeah.
Was it?
It was like, as soon as they started playing it, it just built up this momentum around the stadium. Because my dad was saying on Sky, it got sort of dulled down on the sound.
Yeah,
I assume he watched it on Sky.
Yeah.
But yeah, it didn't come through on the TV. But yeah, in the stadium, everybody's little wristbands that they'd been given that had gone red for Dubois' ring walk and blue and white for Joshua's, they all went green around the stadium as they played their anthem. And my God, it was loud booing as well, and I felt really uncomfortable about it. So yeah, I mean, there's all that side of it that I think by definition, sports washing is doing things to make your country look better to the point that people sort of forget that you're doing it and lose the willpower to argue against it. And I think that's where I am with it now, is that it was such an incredible event. And they're showing visitsaudi.com on all the screens. They're giving out Visit Saudi brochures. Yeah, they've done all the terrible things. We've sort of talked extensively as a society about that. At some point, you have to go, okay, like either you don't go to these things and you completely ignore them, or you just embrace it. And I'm sort of terribly, probably, I'm at that point where I'm like, they're making things happen that we wouldn't see otherwise. And, my morals get parked at that point because what can I do to change it?
No, that's fair. That's fair.
Because yeah, the event was incredible. Like rolling out Liam Gallagher to do a bit of karaoke for 3 songs. Like it's insane. Sort of, it was dreadful in the stadium. I don't blame Liam Gallagher for that. He didn't get to do a sound check. He was sort of pointing to sound engineers, sort of trying to get them to move stuff around. But I wasn't there for a Liam Gallagher concert. I was there for the boxing, and I got this welcome bonus of a few Liam Gallagher tracks. That's all right. I was happy with that. So yeah, incredible. Like the whole setup, no expense spared. It was ridiculous. Yeah, anyway, moving on from the wider world of boxing, let's zoom in a little bit. You mentioned it earlier. Lewis Oakford is fighting this weekend against Deevorn Miller for Commonwealth silver.
Yeah. Now, Lewis beat Deevorn on his debut and beat him as an amateur. Deevorn, since he lost to Lewis, has really come on leaps and bounds and ran on a very big high-winning sequence. Lewis had that performance on the Matchroom show against John Hedges, which I still feel he'd have won that fight. He didn't start off very well, but he's I still think he was taken over in the second half of the fight. He has since changed trainers. I think it was just more convenient to train locally. He's gone from Matt Hurst to Andy Gill. Not that Matt had done anything wrong at all, but I think he lives closer and it was better. He could train more frequently. So Andy's got him for this fight. But I fancy Lewis to do it again and do the triple. I think he can beat him again, and then we can once he beats him, we can put ourselves back in the mix again. But it's a really, really good fight, and well done to promoter Mo Pryor for putting this fight on. So again, I don't where they're doing these shows. There's so many different promoters. I'm not really sure who the promoter. Not being disrespectful, they all work together. So I think you've got John Treffaway, you've got the Nielsens, you've got Mo Pryor. So I'm not really sure who's actually promoting it, who's head promoter, but they're doing it all together. But it's a great fight for them all, whoever's responsible to put it. So full credit to them for putting such a good top of the bill, second top of the bill on next Saturday. But I fancy Lewis Oakford to do the business. I really do.
Is there any risk, any concern about that cut opening back up?
There's always got to be, hasn't it? It was a nasty, nasty cut.
Yeah.
It's had time to heal. But of course, there's a risk. Of course, any cuts can reopen again. It was a nasty, nasty cut, but it wasn't as if it's a cut. It's a one-off situation with a head. So it's not as if it's the same area that keeps getting cut. So I'm hoping it's healed and it's just going to, it won't come back up again. So, but he's done a lot of sparring with it and there's been no issues. So, we're hoping that he can pull it off on Saturday.
Excellent. Good luck, Lewis, and we'll find out next week how it's all gone. One that we're going to touch on next week in far more detail and far more depth, but we'll quickly have a look at it tonight. It's Box Mania show on October the 12th.
Yeah,
your call.
Selling really well. We lost a fight or two off of it. We lost 2 English titles. Still, as we sit here today, 5 title fights left on it. So it's a great card, and you got six fights where you've got positive record v positive record. You don't see that on many shows. We're hoping to make it 9, but like all happens, you get the odd injury that crops up and everything else. But no, it's a really good fight. There are some tickets left. The VIPs have all gone. There's about 10 ringsides left, and there's about 30 standard tickets left. That's all that's left. So if you're coming, you want to get a ticket. It's a sellout. It will be a sellout.
Yeah, and we've still got 4 Southern area fights. Some of that might change nearer the date.
English final eliminator, Southern area final eliminator. You've got the the new Albanian king, Dennis Balazzi, who's he's fighting a positive record opponent. And he's going to fill up the York Hall with Albanian flags. There'll be a lot of Albanian support coming there. We've got Tyro Masuro, who you've interviewed, really exciting light heavyweight prospect, and Sher Khan, who's making his way up through the ranks as a featherweight. So he's going to try and extend his unbeaten record. So it's an exciting undercard as well as all the title fights. So it's a great night to be had by all. Definitely next Saturday.
Yeah, I say we'll touch on it all in depth next week. I think my favourite, the one I'm looking forward to most, Frankie Story, Lewis Frimpong.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that's going to be a real good clash of styles, clash of young trainers too that we mentioned sort of throughout this. Yeah, I think that could be a chess match that ignites a little bit later on.
No, it's great. I mean, we'll talk about the fights next week, but there's 5, 6 of those fights on that card that I think unbelievable fights, just great to watch. So we talk about it more next week. But if anybody wants to go, they should get a jiggle on, because it's. I was looking at the seating stuff today because we had an email of somebody who we knew said, "Can I get front row tickets?" I said, "Front row, wouldn't think so." And we looked. You can get ringside, but they are 7, 8 rows back, the best seats that are left in ringside, and we have hardly got any unreserved left. So it's great. You know, people need to make sure they get down for that show.
Yeah, get it sorted, get your tickets ready, and make sure you're there nice and early as well, because there's going to be loads to watch on it. Boxing general world. I had a message from old fighter Ramez Mahmood, who's now passing on everything that he's done in the world of boxing onto the next generation as a coach. So shout out to Ramez.
He'd be good as well. He'd be really good.
Yeah, it'd be an interesting case study himself, really. As a teacher, how does that translate also into helping the coaching side of it? Does it help him be able to sort of articulate his thoughts to people in a way that perhaps boxing coaches don't typically do? So yeah, keep an eye on Ramez. He's working with the amateurs now. See where he ends up sort of moving on to.
No, good luck.
Here's a question, something to discuss on Ring Talk. I think I know the answer, but with Dazn getting more small hall shows on their platform, is it an option for the Box Mania shows? I'm not sure what the budget is, but I'm sure that is a key factor in it. So what he's referencing there is the GBM shows that happened last week, was the latest one, where a few sort of names and title fights on there. So would that be an option?
Let me word this as best as I can. My understanding, and I stand to be corrected if what I'm told from reliable sources are wrong, because I know this is not what's portrayed, that Dazn are providing no money. That it's the same as with TalkSport, when you want to, you pay to put it on there. So, and I'll give you an example. Last weekend, there was a show at York Hall that was on Fight Zone and TalkSport. I looked at the viewing numbers. Now, these are the total numbers I saw on Fight Zone. And these are people that would have watched 1 minute, could have watched the whole show, but probably the total amount of views was 2,279 when I looked.
No sponsors chucking a lot of money behind 2,000 people, are there?
So when you look at it, it's a vanity project. And if I am right, Dazn, from what I understand, GBM have got an absolute shed load of money behind them. A shed load of money, and I'm talking a lot of money, not that people that have like me could ever get behind boxing. You just can't do that. And the money's colossal. And they're throwing money at this. So therefore they're just paying. And they'll do it with the hope of getting some deal down the line, or for other reasons that may not be bothered about getting a deal down the line. But for whatever reason it is, they've got money to throw at it. We don't have that. I'm not going to pay Dazn to show our shows. If Dazn come along and offered money that benefited our boxers, that's fine. But we can't lose £100,000 on a show. We can't. We don't have that money, and it's not possible. And we've had all this stuff before. There were other promoters going back maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago. Same thing was happening then, wasn't it? Where there was an infinite budget. And there are other promoters out there at the moment where there's an infinite budget without going through the list of boxing. But you can see where the money's being spent. And it doesn't exist through normal processes. It doesn't exist through sponsors. It doesn't exist through ticket sales. It doesn't exist when you can pay these persons. It doesn't exist. So if somebody's wants to put all this money through boxing, then that's fine. But so Dazn, people are thinking, oh, Dazn are offering money. My understanding is they're not offering anything. Same as TalkSport, they're taking free content. But to me, what is the point of spending a load of money on a vanity project? It doesn't. I don't really want to just throw money down the drain. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't really benefit boxers because boxers lose ticket sales by it being shown, unless they're getting purses and getting paid. And these boxers last week were on ticket deals, same as our show, no different. So what's the point of having TalkSport and Fight Zone showing it when the boxers are on the same deals when it's not shown? And you're getting no viewing figures. And probably half the people that are watching that for one fight are probably people that would have bought tickets off the boxers or gone to the show anyway, because people weren't bothered. People that are casual fans aren't going to be bothered to watch it. And that's why DAZN aren't going to pay for it. Hope that explains it.
I've heard from separate people to you, I'd suspect, exactly the same thing, that there is no financial input from DAZN into putting these on their platform. I would welcome anyone from any other promoter to come on the channel and have an open conversation about these things, because to me, I cannot get my head around why, as a promoter, you are willing to lose. And I've seen the figures that would be going into these things. For instance, you've got Hughie Fury fighting sort of midway on an undercard, former world title challenger, heavyweight Hughie Fury against Dazn. That makes literally no sense to give away your product for free and actually pay for it. Because from what I understand, it's not just that they're giving it for free; they have to pay the production costs as well themselves. Don't contribute a penny to it.
That's correct.
So it's not only the fight card cost; it's the production cost as well.
Hughie Fury's not going to be on a ticket deal.
No, yeah, of course he's not. So yeah, I would welcome any conversation around these things, because to me there is huge question marks as to what you're doing with it. If you're telling me it was funding via a capital investment fund that say, okay, look, we're going to put 10 million quid in a pot, you spend it, on the back end of it, we anticipate you've got a 20 million pound TV deal. There are no TV deals out there for 20 million quid at the moment.
Did you imagine, Martin, I said to somebody the other day, do you imagine pitching that product to Dragon's Den?
Oh,
they'd laugh at you.
You'd get absolutely harangued out of the room. It'd be horrendous.
So what I'm saying is it doesn't make sense, right? You know it doesn't make sense. I know it doesn't make sense. But it is what it is. So the thing is, where Ramez is coming from here, he thinks that DAZN are paying fees to people, and Boxmania is a show worthy of TV because it's better, it's more competitive than that show was last week. It did have a couple of good fights on it. The River Wilson, Ben Shaquille Thompson, the Tyson Gallagher fight. There were a couple of good fights they had on, to be fair to them.
Yeah. On there. Yeah, they were, which raises bigger questions.
And your call, the Nielsen one, Treffaway one, they were on TalkSport and with the 2,000 views or whatever on Fight Zone. But they had a good top of the bill, Senior Byfield against an undefeated kid. That was quite, but the rest of it was pretty, I'm sure, pretty rubbish. It was Journeyman against Prospect. It wasn't the greatest show in the world, but it had a good top of the bill. But it doesn't make, to me, look, it's a vanity project. If you're paying to get your stuff on a platform, and Fight Zone has been going for ages, but if you're only getting 2,200 views, and that's not I do want to stress, it's not 2,200 people watch the whole show. That's 2,200 people who've clicked and might have clicked out again.
Yeah, and Fight Zone used to be a subscription service. It used to be that you'd pay £10 a month or whatever it was, the same way you do for DAZN, or £7.99 a month, I think it was.
People wouldn't have paid for it.
Yeah, people weren't paying for it, so it's now free.
And people aren't really watching it.
And people still don't watch it. But sort of, you see the sponsors of it, it's like Dave's Scaffolding or whatever. They're not multi-million-pound sponsors. They're sort of local businesses supporting companies putting them on. I would welcome any conversation with anyone that's involved in the production, the promotion, the setup, any of them. And I'd
like to know what I'd like to have a conversation, just without being, not as an insult or detriment, to why you're doing it.
It's not an insult.
It makes any sense, because I've had this proposed to me since I've been doing promoting 14 years. I must have had 20, 25 different people propose to put our shows on this sort of stuff, and I've always said no, because it makes no sense.
Yeah. If someone said to me, do you know what, I've got £10 million personal funding that I've got that I'm just sort of going to take a bit of a punt on it, right? And it might pay off in 5 years' time. I accept it may not, and I may end up losing £10 million. Fair enough. Like, if that's the answer, fair enough. But as it stands, I don't see it. There is no business model that supports doing what is being done. So therefore, what is the rationale behind it? I'd like to know. So someone drop me a DM, New Age Boxing UK on Twitter. Find me, drop me a DM. We'll have the conversation because I'd be fascinated. Yeah, right. Moving on from that one. One final thing. Dana White seems to be dipping his toe in the boxing water. I see him with Mickey and Moo the other day. Your friend Mickey. What do you make of that? Do you think Dana? He's been talking about it for years and years. Obviously now you've got UFC as part of TKO Group, which also owns WWE. They got bought out. Do you reckon it's time that Dana will start to move in? Because some of the UFC stuff has been run by Riyadh season.
Well, I saw him on Instagram, and he said, "Boxing, you think I'm coming? I'm coming. Be ready," or something. So that was last week. So he's obviously looking to get into it. I think it's good. I think it's a good thing. I think it's fairly stale as it is. I don't think anybody's, so we've discussed the fact I can't work out what Sky are doing. Eddie Hearn, who is a brilliant businessman, I still don't really I understand what he's doing, but he doesn't seem to be that fussed about the UK anymore. And Frank Warren is signing a few fighters and building it up, but there's always a problem that the Warren shows don't get the same traction that Sky does it? It's way behind Sky. Sky have got the #1 platform, way ahead of Dazn. Viewing figures will be much bigger than everywhere else, but it's just not happening, is it? And poor Ben Shalom is getting still struggling in the media, isn't he? He struggled with Eddie Hearn. I think Eddie made him look a bit, I just think he's struggling still. And so I don't really know where Sky's game is here and what they're trying to do, because they are the biggest platform we've got. But, I think it's regressed quite heavily over the last couple of years. I stand to be corrected, but to me, it just seems very strange. I can't work out where their model is. They're not doing. It's not as if they're staging really. They're not signing anybody. They're just getting fights from people. And if, like as you say, if they're letting people go who are fighting for British titles, that doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't get it. But they're still signing. They've got Fran Hennessy running around doing fights. Caroline Dubois, who's I think is not the most exciting to watch. You've got the two Welsh. You've got Karis Artinsaw. But they're not the most inspirational signings. Agreed that Azim Davis is a great fight. They're getting these fights on. Then they did Callum Simpson, Jack Shelley. That was a good fight. Well, on paper, wasn't in reality. But I don't get the business plan. That's what I don't get. I don't get the plan. I don't see the mod. When Eddie Hearn was at Sky, I got the business plan. I don't get the business plan with Sky. I don't think anybody does. Do you?
I was discussing it the other week with somebody. There's no stable.
No.
Sort of without a stable, I don't know how you have a boxing product, because going back to that thing of I don't know who we're meant to be getting behind. Adam Azim is an obvious one, and yes, I like Adam Azim, and I think he's got a high ceiling and can achieve a lot, but he's got to be more active, and to be more active, you need more shows. But he also needs a supporting cast around him. And at the moment, I don't know who that is. Sort of Fraser Clark was one, but he's now off doing Riyadh season with Fabio. Outside of Adam Azim and Caroline Dubois.
Callum Simpson up in Barnsley will create.
Yeah, Callum Simpson. I don't know who else there is. But there's so much talent that you could tap into and sort of bring on board. But you can only do that, or it's only worth doing that, if you've got fight dates. But if there's no fight dates, you don't have, why would you bother making a stable? So I don't know what Sky are doing, but that contract is up in, June next year, I believe, somewhere around that. So maybe they're just maybe Sky are finding a soft exit. I don't know. But it sort of feels a little bit like that.
When I saw Dana White coming, I thought maybe he's trying to go for the Sky thing. I thought maybe GBM were trying to go for the Sky thing, but I was reflecting. I can't see Dana White working under Sky banner and taking all the orders from Sky. I couldn't see that happening. So I don't really know. I don't really, because if they were running down Ben Shalom, which I don't assume they are, but if they were running down, they're behaving as if they're running down Ben Shalom. Do you know what I mean?
That's what I say. It feels like a soft exit almost
Yeah.
from doing it.
I'm
But
not saying for 1 second I know they are, but and if they are not, and they're not giving Ben Shalom the backing he needs, that's what I thought.
no, you're right. And sort of it feels like Eric Ten Hag at United. Sort of, it feels like he's been left in limbo somewhat, with people sort of making decisions above his head that he's probably not privy to. And in the meantime, just left in limbo. But that product isn't able to, not quite the same, because Eric Ten Hag spunked an absolute fortune in not achieving anything, whereas Shalom's not really had the resources. But it's still that thing of sort of, it feels like you're in limbo.
I think he signed Boazzi and Okoli for a lot of money, I'd imagine. So when there's a resource, I think he'd spent quite a bit of money on them, wouldn't he?
Well, that's true, actually. And then what's Boaz? Again, it all leads back to Riyadh season, doesn't it? And what's going on with that? I mean, the Eubank press conference the other day calling everyone scumbags. Oh, sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to repeat that. I might get sued, but he calls everybody scumbags apart from the best promoter. The only one I know isn't a scumbag, Mr. Turkey Al Sheikh.
He did apologise though.
He did. I bet he bloody did. Yeah. I bet he did.
I don't think he had much choice but to apologise.
No, but I can imagine Turkey probably sat him down in a room and said, "Do you know what? Just do better." Like, it's hilarious. It was utterly hilarious. But it's not a great look for the sport, is it? If you're bringing disrepute upon, the biggest promoters that are sat around that table, and you're telling the whole world that these people are scumbags, it's not a great look for the sport. But yeah, I don't know. It's such a weird landscape at the moment that in 2 years' time, do you need Eddie Hearn?
Going back to the Dana White thing, I think there's going to be some humongous. I don't know what. I'm not privy to any information. I genuinely don't know. But I'd imagine there's some humongous changes in boxing coming.
Yeah, I think there would be. Sort of, we mentioned earlier about the TKO group, which is UFC and WWE. As a business model, they looked at trying to run those events sort of side by side of a weekend in a certain location to see if you can sort of capture fight fans. Why wouldn't Dana White want a third arm to that combat sport sort of product and bring in boxing as well? And then you can run 2 of 3 over the course of a weekend with combat sport fans who naturally cross over, sort of bleed into the other sports. And I say there's that Riyadh season link as well. So it's a really interesting time to see what goes on. But I think people forget that ultimately boxing companies are only contracts with boxers. Contracts expire, contracts run out. They're not long term. Once they're done, those same boxers can go and do whatever they fancy anywhere else.
It's very easy for a promoter over a period of 2 to 3 years to be phased out.
Yes.
And when the contracts come up of boxers, they move on somewhere else. So that's quite an easy job. So if Dana White was now to control boxing, to be really up there, and that basically said to everybody, well, when your contracts run out, come and see me.
Yeah, because I mean, you've got all those PBC put on about 1 show a year these days, yet they've got a stable of about 70 fighters. Surely, I mean, contractually, they're probably meant to have X number of fights per year. If they're not getting those, they can probably escape a contract. Dana White could just go and sweep up a load of Americans and start from there. But as
I said, we can't work out what's going on. To me, I just don't get what's going on in boxing at that level. I get the Riyadh season, but I just don't get the rest of it.
Yeah, and so it feels like, I might be miles off, but it feels like in 3 years' time, Riyadh season will just be the main top level of boxing, without any input from anywhere else. Because why would you need it? Why would you want it? You've seen that without Turkey Al Sheikh, these people can't get along. They're not friends. They're not, they spent years bitching and sniping at one another from a distance. Then a man with a bit more money than they've got made them become friendly. So why do you want those people involved at all? Just scrap them and get the product yourself.
Yeah.
I don't know why you wouldn't.
So it's all possible. Anything's possible. Well, I think we'll watch this space, but yeah, it's interesting. But I still say the same thing. It may filter down to the other levels, but what you have got to look at, and I'll stay the same again. There's no point giving. I'd like somebody to explain why it makes sense to give your product away for free and probably pay for it.
Yeah, that's an open invite. We'll end it on that. It's an open invite. Anyone who's involved in that model of giving your boxing product away for free, come talk to us. It is not in a disparaging way. It's not in an accusatory way. It's purely, I don't understand it.
And it's quite good to, and people may say that they're getting a benefit from it. That'd be great to know, because in boxing, I always say, when you're not at the height, when you're our level, you're not in competition with everybody else. We're doing our stuff, managing our fighters. There's two different jobs: as a management and the promoting. As a manager, I'm doing my job. From the promoting aspect, you're never going to compete with the TV boys. So how are you going to maneuver your fighters? I don't really see putting them on a thing where they get on Fight Zone does anything. It's not going to give them sponsors of any level. It's not going to. It looks flashy on the night, but the promoter's costing a fortune in doing it. So they must be hemorrhaging money because they want to do that, and it just doesn't make any sense. But yeah,
there we go. It's an open invite.
I don't think the phone will ring though, because I don't imagine somebody. I don't think there's a good reason.
The offer's there. The offer's there. Many of these people I sort of have on social media. They can just drop me a line, and we'll sit and have an open discussion. Because I've got questions, and I'd like to have them answered.
No, exactly that.
Right. Anyway, Steve, pleasure.
Top man.
Next week we'll have a full preview of the October 12th Box Mania card.
And hopefully Lewis Oakford has done the business this weekend with any luck.
Good luck, Lewis, Saturday night. Brill. Thank you very much, Steve.
Cheers, matey. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.